getting your grant ready. And that's the process. It is about getting grant ready. And that's plans, processes, procedures before even doing the ask in terms of the grant. So conceptualizing, using the grants calendar to identify the right grant that you're eligible for, that you should be applying for across not only government, but I think more and more public libraries are looking at philanthropic. Obviously, that means partnership or auspicing with an entity that's got incorporated status, DGR status, deductible gift recipient status, or TCC status, taxable charity concession status. But libraries, public libraries, are pursuing those options as well. So it's well worth looking at philanthropic now and seeing the viability of that and eligibility. But getting grant ready unilaterally, because it's a three-part process, right? So it's conceptualizing what you want basically in terms of funding and then identifying it through grants calendar, step one. Step two is the drafting, editing, proofreading of the grant before submittal. And then upon successful receipt of the grant, very much the auditing, the acquittal, the evaluation that you should be doing inherently for yourself, let alone what's expected from the funding body. So it's looking at the right grant. Why apply for a grant that you know you're never going to get? So very much again a targeted approach, top 10, top 20, different facets and features, what you want, programs, initiatives, infrastructure, as well, utilizing obviously the resources that are there in councils. Some councils may have a grants officer that can assist you with this process as well, but very much working with your finance department as well in terms of putting together a budget, cost benefit analysis, future financial projections, because they want to see that. Government really want to see community capacity building. They want to see cost benefit analysis, community consultation. In other words, if you build it, will they come? And so the identifiable need, the why, as we always say in grants writing, because that's what you're answering all the time. Why you, why here, why now, why this amount of money that you're asking for at the end of the day. And very much again, not thinking like a silo. Can you do this in conjunction with other libraries, right? And I mean, adjoining LGAs, government likes a wide demographic and geographic for its funding. So looking at investing the opportunity of rolling out programs across a wide geographical area, if feasible, obviously at the end of the day. Okay. Obviously, there's a focus still on not just a library anymore, because it's not just a library anymore, is it? It's a community hub. And that's the narrative I'd be using in a grant application as well, because so many services are provided now at libraries beyond books. And so again, it's utilizing all of those to show the need, the quantifiable growth, whether it be, an age demographic, First Nations, multicultural, young families, children, whatever the case may be, in terms of your programs or projects, but your expansion strategy as well. What am I saying? I just need to see the plan before they ask. So have a business plan, have a strategic plan, have a project plan, and have a budget before you commit to a grant application. That's even identifying a grant application at the end of the day, because otherwise we're all there like that at 4:55 p.m. pressing send and hoping for the best. That's not where we're going to be. That's a last minute grant application, and I'm trying to steer you away from that today. That we move basically to something that this is what I really want you to remember from today, that a well written grant application is clear, concise, and compelling, or short, succinct, and to the point, because you're writing a glorified tweet. You're counting characters now rather than words. So you got to be on point, non-narrative. That's version control. That's drafting. Doing a last-minute grant application inherently is going to pose problems for you because it'll be lacking. It'll be last minute. It'll be rushed. You want to articulate yourself in the best possible fashion at the end of the day. So optimally, grants are open for about 6 weeks. You should be doing a draft per week. You should be grant ready. That grant should be really prepped to about 60% value in the first instance, because it could be recurrent funding. So you could look at last year's funding round and look at indicatively how you can construction a narrative around that well ahead of time before basically the next year's funding round comes up again. So it's looking at your top 10 grants that you need to be applying for and really are resourcing them accordingly, because you may have to get letters of support, you may have to get quotes. I'm advocating you do this well in advance of the grant, obviously, because you've already conceptualized and know what grant's coming up, because you have a grants calendar of what's coming up and what's been announced basically across the board. And I think more and more I'm seeing now what the public libraries that I'm working with as clients, diversification, and not just applying for what's coming out of state library or what's coming out basically of even state government to a degree. They're looking expansively at other state government departments for projects and services they're undertaking as well. And even those partnerships with the charitable sector, university sector, TAFE, a number of different, even private entities, basically, in terms of what they're doing around IT and IT education. And so, again, it's very much understanding this and knowing where you fit within the remap. So, doing a mind map of where you are to where you need to be and how much money you need for it at the end of the day. So, it's that plan. That's what I'm not seeing as a grant assessor myself, right? I'm seeing reactive rather than proactive. And I'm needing to see the plan because the expectation is from the business plan, strat plan, project plan, you're extrapolating from to write the grant. So it's not copy and paste, it's utilize rather than plagiarize. And I'll talk about the elephant in the room because it is AI. I've no problem with using AI in terms of drafting, not the final submission. Government uses AI to detect AI and plagiarism. So very much don't write the whole application in AI or get AI to write the whole application for you. You need to put your own personal stamp on it as a local government authority, let alone a library. So very much, and different needs and wants per area as well. So be careful about using it. That's all I'm saying. All right. But have a plan. And that means the libraries I'm working with presently, we're sitting down and conceptualizing not only funding options for them, but what's the plan? What's the ask? What not only do they need in 2026, but what will they need in 2030? And how they're going to resource that around funding as well. Because grants is a contribution, right? Expectation from government is that you're sourcing capital from other revenue streams. So fundraising, sponsorship, crowdfunding, bequests, donations, all that money is coming in different forms into the library. Because to use a metaphor, you bake the cake, they put the cream on top with the grant. They're not going to give you the grant for the cake and the cream. So it's very much thinking about contributory funding as well. A lot of grants now are moving towards 50-50 funding, cost offset, risk offset for government, and you have to match fund it. Even if it's not 50-50, indicatively, you're looking at making, if financially viable, a 10 to 30% contribution to the project. Put your money where your mouth is. And that's what they like to see. Rather than 100%, please serve some more ask, basically, not what they want to see at the end of the day. They want to see substantiation. They want to see that it's needed. So that that community consultation, and as I said, that cost benefit analysis, on top of project rationale and methodology, the why and the how of the project at the end of the day. So they need to see due process. So Canberra talks about it in terms of TQM and program logic. TQM is total quality management. Rhyme, reason, sense, rationale has to stack up as a pitch, and a grant is a glorified sales pitch. And then program logic basically do part A, evaluate part A, and then only then move on to part B. So a systemized approach to this, a baby step approach, if you like. So very much they want to see this. They're not seeing this at the moment. They're seeing gaps in the argument. When you write a grant application, you make a statement and you back it up. What any grants assessor loves is stats and facts, tangible data that you can't argue against. So that's qualitative and quantitative evidence that they need to see basically to support your argument. Nothing speculative whatsoever. So again, the procedure that you're going to do, what's your project delivery model? How can you deliver on time, non budget? You're going to sign a funding contract. How's that going to happen? Okay. Given time and capacity issues, given you've got competing interests, they want assurance on quality control, risk management, governance, and project rollout. And so you've got to have that. You've got to make reference to it. But quintessentially, the most important phrase you're going to talk about in a grant application is the acronym VFM, value for money, because it's taxpayers' money. So you got to talk about that all the time, every time, and then how you're substantiating that and proving that at the end of the day. They want to see that. And you're always playing the long game with grants because you're looking at recurrent funding. You're looking at leveraging one grant for the next grant, and that means having case studies of where you're delivered previously, to what value, to what worth, to show indicatively someone else has funded you and why. The justification again. And then researching what's out there. What are you using even at the moment in terms of a grants calendar? Right. So we got Grant Connect, obviously, at federal government level. You got your relevant state government departments you may be working with. Obviously, then you get moving into philanthropic as well, but even going back to the private sector, RDA, Regional Development Australia, do a lot of good grants calendars for free on the website in the areas that you operate in. Foundation for Regional Rural Renewal in Western New South Wales and Southwest New South Wales. And then the MPs themselves have a lot of grants calendars, state and federal. They put out grants newsletters, grants opening and closing. So a lot of free resources for you, let alone what you're using internally already in council that you'll have. A lot of councils will subscribe to different programs from Grants Hub, Grants Finder, Grants Guru, etc., etc. So you can go through those grants and what's available for you, and obviously you can apply depending on eligibility and time frame. But relationships are huge. It's certainly in government more than ever before, and certainly now leading into a state election, and certainly now with philanthropic as well. People have to know you to like you to give you the money. So it's very much again that reputationally, I'm working with a lot of libraries who do a piece of business storytelling before they even commit to the grant, the story of where they come from, where are they, and where they're going as a public service. And I think that's quintessential, not only in terms of the grant application, you include that, but it's a piece that's done on your local government website and your local government social media. Why? Because if you're shortlisted, what am I going to do? I'm going to Google you. And I need to see that you're current, topical, and relevant for investment. And if you have a story out there, how you're committed to undertaking this project and you're seeking funding for such, it'll go a long way to convert mindset. So I'm advocating a long-term game here and not a rushed last-minute application, as I said. So it's very much, again, thinking about the right approach to this, thinking about recurrent funding, thinking about basically how you're going to resource it, obviously, at the end of the day, given you've competing interests professionally. That's where you need to work, as I said, with your colleagues within council to help you assist that. But reporting is very important. So the research relationship reporting, right? They're the three you need to be thinking about in that regard. Time and capacity is your biggest issue, right? Time to write the grant, capacity to deliver it. This is unnerving funding bodies at the moment. People are promising the world and under delivering. In fact, people are not even doing the acquittals and the auditing, and then have the audacity to apply for next year's funding, and they haven't even done the acquittal in the last year. So again, this is relationship management. Again, a lot of the philanthropics are open to have a phone call with you, or even meet or come out and do a site visit and see what you're doing. Um, and certainly, it's being mindful of what's in your region. So, and then ethically, and have to have a policy around that within local government of who you're going to accept a grant from. So, some libraries I've worked with would obviously have accepted money from coal mining companies. Others haven't. Um, Others have accepted basically money from, we'd say, looking at partnering with community entities around club grants. And that's the profits of gambling, obviously, as a grant. So ethically, what policy do you have in terms of that, basically, as a council for or against that? But no last minute grant applications. Inherently, that's what I'm still seeing. All right. And it's just going to be slipshod, lacking, haphazard, not substantive in nature. As I said, make a statement, back it up. First 20 words, last 20 words of your answers, words won or lost, impact statements. In between is substantiation, stats and facts. Okay. If I'm asking for 500 words in a grant answer, I want 500. I will take 450. Can't go over. It's going to cut you off automatically. But I still get 250 words as an answer. You're doing yourself a disservice there. If you know 250 words, you can spell it out, which means you haven't planned your answer, beginning, middle, end. So it's compiling your data in the first instance of what you need to evoke, and simply put, answering the question. Now that may sound blatantly obvious, but the amount of people that still don't answer the question that I assess is phenomenal, right? So indicatively, a question would be, please provide a brief overview of your organization. Keyword there is obviously brief, right? So it's very much on point and on narrative. It's the KISS principle. It's a test of common sense, not of Dickensian or Shakespearean English. It's very much been matter of fact, straight to the point. Okay, and then substantiation of such. That's what I'm looking for in a well-written grant application. And again, back to clear, concise, and compelling in terms of the three C's. So as I said, answer the question. All right, break down. They're giving, this is an open book exam. They're giving you the answers in two places. One, the background to why the grant's conceptualized, but everyone's in such a rush to do a last minute grant application, they bypass that. And then in the questions themselves, the key words in the question. Like a key question's come up recently now in grants. How will you define the success of this project? It's a great question, isn't it? And it's very much, again, you got to think about how to break that down over a period of time or over a period of KPIs and ROI as well. But it's really reading the question. You were told this in high school and university, and still I get people going, thanks for the question. Anyway, what I want to say is, I don't want that. I just want an answer to the question so I can mark it and I give you the marks because I got a marking matrix to work off and have that cumulative effect that basically you get shortlisted and thereafter at the end of the day. So this is a business case. This is a glorified sales pitch. And what I ask libraries I work with is, do you know how to sell? And it's about quantifying, qualifying all the facets and assets that you have to sell. Normally get applications that look like that. Tell you what, give me the money and then I'll come up with the idea. Not what we're looking for here in terms of a business investment. And that's what the way governments see it, right? And it's very much, again, that why would they invest in you? They're oversubscribed 12 to 1 in any funding round they release. Why your library over another library? And so I need to see that point of difference. I need to see that unique selling point. I need to see that basically something tangible is going to happen with this funding, whether it be infrastructure, whether it be a program that hasn't happened before, or even if it has happened before and you see version 2.0, how this is expansive in nature and is still adding value to the community at the end of the day. You are just a conduit. It's not about you. So when you write a grant application, stop talking about yourself and start talking about what you do for the community at large. So stop talking about the I and talk about the we. we're in this together with the community because you're just a conduit for the funding. The service delivery will go to the benefit of society at large. And that's who they're interested in funding at the end of the day. Okay. So have a grants policy. And I'm still surprised that a lot of local government authorities don't have one in New South Wales. It gives you an dictum or a roadmap again, or a GPS strategy of how we apply for grants, when we apply for grants, what grants we apply for, what grants we don't apply for, how we acquit the funding, etc. Well, it's good. It's a guideline. It's a roadmap. As I said, I talked to your finance team about instigating one. Now, I'm not talking about a massive policy document here. It's 3 or 4 pages max. All right. Um, it's mandated in other states, not necessarily in New South Wales, so that's interesting. But having a grants policy, having a grants dictum, you may have one already. Again, reach out to your grants officer if you have one, or whoever's in control of grants in council. But it's good to have that, right? Just as a roadmap and a guidance. There needs to be a CRM or a database of previous grant applications need to use as a resource bank. So all your previous grant applications, there'll be learnings that you can extract from them. So it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about repurposing. And so very much, again, you need to coagulate them, whether it be in the cloud or whether it be in some data management system that's obviously in records in your local government authority. You need to have that as a resource bank for yourself in terms of previous grant applications. So there's no duplication, but also your value adding as well. Grants management system, which leads on from the previous one as well, basically. And again, inherently for yourself as a library, because it just goes as a resource bank for yourself to go, right, we can just look at this grant in context of what we've applied previously. We can extrapolate case studies from the previous one and utilize those and repurpose and show value adds. I'm trying to save you here in terms of the short term, and given that everyone's time poor, that basically you have a way of doing this in some way, shape, or form that streamlines, but not losing the essence still of what you're doing. So that grants calendar is integral, as I said, because you need to know what's coming up. Now, grants are open all the year. It's not about footy season, basically. They're open in December and January and closing in December and January as much as any other month of the year, as much as in the financial year. So it's very much, again, that targeted approach. There'll be recurrent funding year on year that you're well knowledgeable of, but it's expanding beyond that as well and looking at what else is out there grants wise. Exponentially, the funding is growing all the time, particularly from philanthropy. And I think this is where there should be a focus from public libraries more than ever before, back to the old Carnegie Library model at the turn of the last century. So it's very much, again, thinking about people, because we're seeing that, right? You need to have a spectrum of funding as a public library now more than ever before, not just grants, but as I said, crowdfunding, fundraising, sponsorship. Bequests is your big one. That's massive in terms of people leaving money and legacy funding to public libraries and the opportunity to do that. And canvassing and brokering for that. And we're advising our clients on that at the moment. Can you write a grant your own? I wouldn't advocate it. There's a common held view that most people can write a grant on their own, though, if they have the time and capacity, up to $50,000 in value. Saying that, I'd still resource yourself, given the resources are there for you in local government to help you. You've got a finance team, you have potentially a grants officer, you have a line manager, all of these things that can help you basically build a better, more articulate argument at the end of the day, basically. They only come together for the purpose of the grants. But again, they add skill set, expertise, IP, that you need a flavor in the room, basically, in different perspectives, so it can value add to a more articulate grant application at the end of the day. Okay. You may want to bring in a grants writer. Great grants writers out there for you. Look at it as an option, as I said, and the feasibility of doing that to get you across the line at the end of the day. So it's realizing your potential, deeply local outcomes, extending your reach, and focused workforce, basically, is what I've been hearing a lot from public libraries across Australia. All right. So how are you matching funding to that? What are you resourcing against that? Government will only pay for so much. So how else are you looking at this in terms of grants? Basically, that's leading you back to philanthropic as well. And obviously that comes back to eligibility, but very much you've got to be thinking about looking at this in terms of your priorities and how you're seeking that as well, but also how you're canvassing funding and asking for funding to support some of your services from the general public, even though they are paying rates and they're already subscribing in different ways, but there's an opportunity still there. So again, it's coming back to how to sell yourself and having a profile around that. So again, you need to be thinking about being future ready, a commitment to improve capability. You need to be talking about all these things as an assurance in a grant application to a funding body. Your place in the public realm, library spaces, how they need to grow and expand, and they're inclusive, social cohesion, social inclusion, respectful of First Nations, multicultural, etc., etc. investing in learning and literacy, advocacy, locally connected partnership possibilities, and leadership. Now, you do a lot of this, if not all of this already in some way, shape, or form. Sell it. Sell your virtues and values. So you've already got a script to work off to remind people that they should be investing grants funding into libraries at the end of the day. Very, very important. And the justification for libraries and for libraries to continue, right? Because unfortunately, there has been debate that I've experienced around local government whereby, well, do we need our library? Of course, you need your library. It's more than a library now. As I said, it's a community hub. It offers much more facets and features and services. All right. So you're going to be selling all these virtues and values to show that basically you deserve longevity, deserve investment. The capabilities required to deliver the project, the resources needed for the project, the capacity to manage, you got to give me quality assurance on that and reassurance around that. Okay. Because big word for government at the moment is authenticity. All right. They want to see effectiveness and efficiency. They want to see robust. They want to see agile. All these buzzwords that have been used in grants, basically, that you should be giving them reassurance. Now, it's great using these words, but you must substantiate these words and phrases and indicatively in your own case study and the way that you do it. Okay. So I need that assurances at the end of the day. This is a nice mind map to have to laminate, stick it up on the staff fridge and show this is how we do grants. And this is out of stronger organizations out of America. But I like it. I think it has a unilateral purpose that you identify the need, you build a project and design a project around that need, then you research who's providing funding around that, then you submit your application accordingly, then you become the funder's choice and receive that funding, then you do the implementation administration of that funding, then you do the reporting internally and externally to the funding body on that funding, then you evaluate internally and externally, and then you start the process all over again with your next grant. All right. And that's baby steps. That's breaking down. There's a lot between each of those sections, obviously, but it's a good blue sky ideology to think about. This is a grants process we need to have as a library. All right. With basically identifying grants, building our projects, basically. All right. Because you really got to ask yourself this question now as a library: how many grants are we missing out now on? And why are we missing out on these grants if we're missing out on these grants? And then even when we're getting grants, why are we getting grants? And if we're not getting grants, why are we not getting grants? Now, you're not necessarily going to get the feedback you so want because of issues of probity. They're not going to go back to every applicant and state why you didn't get the grant. You're probably going to have more chance even in philanthropic because you're based on that relationship. But you got to do your own self-evaluation. You can't just commit to something that's ever decreasing circles in terms of applying for a grant every year and not getting it. There's a reason on your behalf or on their behalf you're not getting the funding. So that's why, as I said, it needs to be a targeted approach of the grants, basically. And again, no conflict of interest. There's ethical understandings around who you're willing to accept funding from, etc., etc. All these considerations back to having a grants policy that's written, spelt out, and this is how we do it as a council library. So when writing, focus on highlighting the significance of the project. Don't exaggerate the scope of the project, and please proofread. The amount of typos that I still see, phenomenal. Phenomenal, given that people are using AI and spell check. All right, so it may sound minuscule, but it's very important, obviously, at the end of the day. It needs to read well, it needs to flow as a narrative. Formatting now online doesn't allow for paragraph breaks or bullet points. So white space is your friend. You're going to manipulate that as best you can. And basically, because I don't want blocks of text, I need it to be easily read. You got to put yourself in my spot as an assessor that I got to read a multitude of these applications in a given day. It needs to be user friendly in terms of navigating it, understanding it, translating it to me. While there may be a subject matter expert from libraries on the panel, there may not be. And so it's educating the uneducated around what you're doing and the importance of libraries and your programs and initiatives and expansion ideology around what you want to do when it comes to maybe building a library or infrastructure and the like. This is the definition of a good grant, right? Is effectively addressing the selection criteria, demonstrating your council's or library's ability to deliver services that respond to issues in the LGA. That's all I want you to do. All right. But it's keeping it on point and keeping it on narrative is a challenge in the restrictions of word count. So you're starting with the inverse pyramid, right? So it's quite wide and varied, and then you narrow the focus when you're drafting, editing, proofreading around what you're doing all the time. And that's quintessentially how you're going to get it across to those funding bodies, the pointy end, right? Because you can talk around the subject, but I want you to talk at the subject. All right. So there's an old journalistic adage, which I love, basically count your words and make your words count. And that's really where you are. all right? Because it's like someone stopping you in the street and having the ability to describe your organization in 20 words or less. And it's now thinking about that. We live in a scroll generation. It's clickbait, so I need to see something quite fast and justification for that. You don't have the expansive nature to explain in great detail. Okay. So eligibility still, I have to raise that because I still get a lot of people applying for grants that are not eligible to apply for. So look at that. And then obviously beyond the remit, as I said, of grants you'd never think about looking at. Number of libraries now are using NGOs, not-for-profits, charities, community organizations to auspice their application on their behalf and circumvent the funding through them back to the library to do the project delivery in conjunction with them. A lot of councils are pursuing that option. I'd weigh it up and consider it because it opens you up to philanthropic funding. All right, so have a discussion, have a chat internally about is that best fit for you, basically. But people are pursuing it and doing it to great success. So I'd be looking at that, obviously targeting in who you're going to partner with to do that project delivery very deliberately. What's required that you're building capacity in your service sector, the library service. You have a sustainability of approach. You're creating a profile for your LGA library. You're planning your grant application. You're proactive, not reactive. You have a grants calendar. You're all about the acquittal of the grant, the auditing, the evaluating. That you have a project plan, business plan, and capex, your budget in the first instance to extrapolate from, as I said, and your application connects with me, communicates quite clearly what the ask is, and shows me how you're going to deliver on time and on budget. Okay, so very much again, matter of fact, it's a checklist. It's about ticking all the boxes on all of them at the end of the day. Okay, less questions means more assurity from a funding body. And that's necessarily not what I'm seeing in a lot of cases, that people haven't planned it out. There's gaps in their argument. There's holes in basically the project delivery. There's no assurance basically about how they're managing the funding or how they've done previously with public sector financing. There's a skill set or experience in the team to do so. I need to see all that because again, it's about quality assurance, governance, best practice. Um, and you need to evoke that all the time, all right, continually, particularly if you haven't got a grant from them before, you're an unknown entity. So what are funding bodies looking for? Well, who are you, obviously? What do you want the money for? How's this linked to your strategic plan? How and even who will it impact? What's your blend of strategy and storytelling in your grant application? What's the total project value? Because you may be asking for a pilot project. And people give to people, not to projects. What do I mean by that? Relationship management. I have to know you to like you to give you the money. So have a profile. And so that's what I'm saying. The preceding piece here even is about getting out there and telling the good news story of what you're doing as a public library and the community impact that you're having and the social impact that you're having, all right, in all sectors of society. All right, hard to argue against that then and hard not to justify awarding and funding. Again, not just buying an output, they're buying an outcome. Government loves inputs, outputs, outcomes in a grant application. Inputs, what you're putting in and resourcing it with in kind or financial. Outputs, what's happening because of the grant. Outcomes, what's happening translatively across the library service as a best practice model because we've given you money that can be a learning for another library in New South Wales. To invest in positive impact, something tangible happens with the funding, evidence of demand, proof of outcome, and for applicants to stop talking about activities and projects and talk about impacts. Don't just tell me how are you going to do it, tell me what happens because of it. That's what I'm more interested in, the catalyst for change, the empowering piece. So even more synopsized checklist, are there grants for us? From the ones we identify, are we eligible to apply? We have a fully comprehensive list. We have to use the grants calendar to best effect. Then we have to write the grant. Then we have to deliver the grant successful. Then we must do the reporting and acquittal. And this is government expectation, right? That you demonstrate a clear understanding of the objectives and be supported by evidence-based statements, a clear and detailed description of how the proposal will be implemented, evidence of how the proposal will achieve, again, back to government's favorite phrase, value for money, right? So two acronyms they love, VFM, value for money, WEFM, WIFM, what's in it for me, such as the link between proposed outcomes or project deliverables, benefit to the community or target group, and the amount of funding sought, and identify strategies with key elements to demonstrate how the activity objectives will be met. Again, we're back to planning, and resourcing accordingly afterwards. How the proposal will complement or exist what's happening. So again, you don't want to go against the grain, right? You want to see and you want to research what government's awarding funding for, what's their prerogative, why there should be a natural correlation between what they want to achieve is what you want to achieve, that you're playing nicely per se in the sandpit. Describe your links within the LGA or target group, including established relationship with stakeholders, relevant organizations, clients, and their service providers. Again, you see I'm stressing their relationships. All right. Well ahead of the grant application. Your council's experience in establishing and delivering similar types runs on the board, demonstrating understanding of the proposed outcomes of the activity and how you establish and maintain services. Again, then assurance of continuity of approach, and describe your stakeholder management and relationship management skills and how you're going to actually effectively deliver on time and on budget. Back to quality assurance again. Evidence of how you engage with government again, relationship management and work in terms of due diligence, process and reporting and delivering on time. And what strategies do you have to provide ongoing assessment to ensure to meet the identified outcomes, such as using key performance indicators and reporting arrangements? All very easy when you say it fast in an Irish accent, isn't it? All right. So you need to think about breaking this down and spelling this out for yourself, basically, about how this is going to work and who's going to do what, as I said, because it's a lot to do on your own. And I don't expect you to do it on your own. It's about resourcing yourself accordingly. Okay. So take away this recording today and break it down for yourself and your colleagues and watch again and see basically, well, what do we need to do? Where do we need to be? That gap analysis so we can progress accordingly. What are your governance arrangements? And demonstrate that. So that's back to your policy document as well and everything else. Describe your relevant experience. Oh, sorry. Response there. Experience, skills, qualifications, including the broad structure within council and how you use those skills and experience within and have used as a library in the past to deliver projects on time and on budget again. All right. They want to see that continuous improvement and evaluation, two very important words again that I would give quality assurance of in your grant application. What makes for a successful proposal? Obviously, within the funding body's area of scope and giving sufficient documentation supported with facts. Not too much to ask, right? But it takes time to accumulate that. It takes time to narrow that down, basically, and edit and proofread and draft. But this is why we're knocking out the ballpark in round one. Nothing here that's earth-shattering in terms of mindset, but it's just a common sense. But because people are doing rushed applications, they're missing this and not quantifying or qualifying these. So there's nothing here that's outstanding that you can't correct. Okay. And I draw your attention here to the second slide and the second last bullet point. Insufficient evidence that the project can sustain itself beyond the life of the grant. What happens when the money runs out? You can't say you're going to capitulate the project. All right. So again, you need to be thinking that cost benefit analysis, that future financial projections at the end of the day. Okay. So they're looking for a goal statement or objective statement, vision statement or mission statement. Activities and tasks that are necessary to accomplish those objectives, benefits, results, and performance indicators of success. I wouldn't design a project unless I had those because you're going to be asked for them in the grant, but you also got to give assurance to yourself that you're doing this basically in the correct and proper fashion. Okay. So again, you may come back to you thinking about if I'm applying for grants, I gotta conceptualize the plan first before identifying having a grants calendar, before instigating a relationship, before even the drafting, the editing, proofreading, before even giving myself assurance that I can deliver because of a quality control and a due process manner of delivering on grants. So unless you can give yourself assurances in all those, the full spectrum, you're lacking in some way, shape, or form. And this is what I do when I get a government grant. I highlight the keywords, right? This is an open book exam, as I said. They're giving you the answers already. And again, it's stripping down the questions, right? Looking at the keywords. And it's indicatively what I want as a response. Primary purpose, brief overview, description, what your project will do, how to achieve those objectives, demonstrate. I need to see a case study of your understanding of the need. Describe implementation, back to government's favorite phrase again, value for money. And demonstrate your experience in developing, delivering, managing, and monitoring. Again, project delivery, project rationale, project methodology, project modeling. Okay. Now, a lot of this, as I said, is a preemptive strike. You can do this and design this in place well in advance of the grant. So by the time the grant opens, you can hit the ground running. Right. You just have to amend and repurpose accordingly based on the nuances of last year's application, this year's application. So this is all achievable if you have time and capacity to do it. And you're sanctioned to do so by management and your resource base to allow it to happen. That 50-50 funding is becoming more popular. All right, cost offset, risk offset for government. So you have to step up and be financially resourced to do that in terms of match funding. Even if it's not being asked for, indicatively, if you can make a financial contribution and financially viable between 10 and 30%, it'll be well received, right, from funding bodies. Okay. And again, utilize all the resources that are out there, right? Because obviously government announces a grant, they're going to do a webinar and a workshop. They've FAQs, they have an information hotline. You should be using all of those resources to clarify the purpose and quantify answers to questions for yourselves to get basically a more streamlined approach to your approach to writing that grant. Grant writers should apply for grants that suit particular identified needs, taking into account time to deliver on the grant successful, available grantors for type and purpose, the grantor's requirements, when the funds are needed, and the organization's policies. So again, it's very much, again, breaking it down, spelling it out, and seeing when you go back through this recording, what do we have, what we don't have, what do we need to do to resource ourselves to elevate our ask in terms of grants at the end of the day, and what remit are we operating in? Are we going for a $5,000 grant, a $50,000 grant, a $500,000 grant? And what do we need to do to resource that then based on that dollar value? This is highly competitive. Government are oversubscribed, particularly at federal level, 12-1 in any funding round they open. The only guarantee I can give you in terms of grants is rejection, all right, because it's extremely competitive. But someone still has to get the grant. It might as well be you. But it's having that targeted approach rather than an ad hoc last minute approach is what's going to define success. How does your mission align with the funding body's core priorities? What they want to achieve is what you want to achieve. And as I said, how do you play nicely in the sandpit? Collaboration is key, both internally across local government and externally with other local government authorities and state library and the likes as well, basically. All right, that's key. All right, that's key to this. All right, I'm seeing a lot of libraries partnering with each other geographically based, rolling out workshops anyway, which is great. But is there an opportunity for them to partner in terms of funding as well? Properly, it just needs to be investigated further. And I'm sure a number of them are doing it already within their networks. Again, need for funding and commercial potential. The two acronyms we work off, as we said, the market opportunity where they haven't given you funding before is a good investment now based on geography and demography. Management capability, and now asking for bios of the caliber of people in your organization, their ability to manage financing, their expertise around such, and local, state, or national benefits as a knock on, as I said, not only for the library sector, but you being a community hub and what you're doing as a resource that can be a learning there for best practice in future public library initiatives across the state. So know the program rules, plan your application, be creative but honest. Don't say you can do it in 12 months when it's going to take you 18 months to do it. Research successful grants, who they gave the money to, for what and how much. Provide information required, no more, no less. Answer the question you're asked, not what you think you're asked, and no superfluous information. As a grants assessor, I'm not going to fill in the gaps for you. All right? So on the screen, it has to be on the screen or on the page, or it's not there at all. Okay? Grants is about telling a story. Yes, it is. We're painting a picture with words. Getting away from that last minute application, pressing send and hoping for the best. Proactive rather than reactive. Grants calendar. All right, you need to know what's coming up, obviously, to apply for it. People can only help you if you know you exist. Profile, 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 and cultivating that relationship with the funding body ahead of time, because again, of issues of probity, I can't talk to you during the funding round. Reporting only provided data that will be used by the grant giver, which will be specified to you. 4 accountability principles. I expect you to abide by equity, access, transparency, and responding appropriately. Small questions serve as big ones. Understand that. Don't trivialize a question in the grant application form, which I still see to this day that people, you're not seeing them marking value to it. But people think, oh, that's perceived to be an easy question. I don't have to spend as much time and effort on it. They all stack up and they all have marks and quality control around them. So again, don't do yourself a disservice, right? Be comprehensive in every facet and feature of your grant application. And beware of trade-off thinking. So understand that they may award the grant publicly for 100,000, but they may come back to you and say, look, what can you do for 75,000? So there needs to be flexibility in your design and modeling of your project, because you may get an optimum amount instead. Basically, they may not give you full funding. They may give you compartmentalized funding. What can you do? What's your plan B? What's your contingency measures that you're factoring in, not only in terms of budget, but in terms of planning as well and project delivery. So work with other connectors internally and externally, and use that resourcing purposely for your grant, and being across what government's saying and doing and awarding on grants funding. But this is your first template. This is what you're starting with. Who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? When do you do it? Why do you do it? And how much money do you want for it? And as I said, the why is integral. That's the predominant question in any grant application. So this is what you have to start with that allows you then to move on to a grant application with substantive data and evidence to suffice the ask. Government likes effectiveness and efficiency, as I said. So once achieve consistency programs and simplified processes, that's what you've got to give them assurance of in your grant application. And as I said, inputs, outputs, outcomes, a benchmark of equivalency for government that you need to substantiate for them. Okay. Spell it out, but do so in a succinct fashion. That's a well-written grant application. So carefully follow the instructions, tailor your proposal, specific budget requests into the funding body's priorities and guidelines. Use positive language. We are, we will, rather than conditional language. If you give the money to us, something might happen with it, maybe. Right? I'm really looking off the 80-20 rule. 20% of your narrative is about the problem. 80% is about the solution. Grants are only given for solutions, not problems. Okay, keep that in mind. Shorter is better. Keep your proposal tight and details condensed, and document a need or problem on multiple levels, but be specific to your area, to your need and want, and amount you're asking for in relation to that it stacks up. So talk about an investment rather than a gift, because people have this perception of grants that it's free money. It is not. It is a business transaction, ROIs and KPIs. It is an investment. As I said, 80-20 rule, focus on solutions rather than problems. And a realistic assessment of the urgency, again, which kind of reeks of desperation, right? You know, I know you needed the money yesterday, but the grant award might be for anything from 3 to 6 months. You can't do it and get ahead of yourself, be retrospective funding, null and void. So again, you've got to be patient here and understand basically where it fits in within your financial modeling and service delivery modeling as well. All right. It's not what you want to achieve, it's what the funding body wants to achieve and where you correlate to that. And there is a difference. Project rationale, why the project is needed, the justification, and to do that, you need to do this. Break it down, spell it out, substantiate it with stats and facts. Evidence, evidence, and more evidence, which means a piece of research, qualitative and quantitative, community survey and the like as well. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. Fits in with existing planning and include that compatibility in your argument as well, please. Very, very important in that regard. Okay. As justification for what you're asking for. I'm seeing insufficient evidence around project management and time management in a lot of instances in grants, and that unnerves me. So I really want to see really good evidence of such, please. That you have a model and a model of implementation around such. Budget, no artificial budget inflation. It costs what it costs. I want exact figures, rounded figures. I want my optimum amount of quotes to suffice it. The quote should obviously be indicatively for the future when it's going to commit, not for the quote for now. I'm gonna you can factor in project blowouts, which anything between 13 and 10 and 30% bandwidth will be allowable, unless seen as state significant. But price everything and no incidental costs. I'm not going to pay for the running costs of the library, right? It has to be project related costs or infrastructure related costs. So there has to be some cost absorption there as well. But you got to factor in your own contribution outside of financial in terms of in-kind, volunteers. I need to see a dollar value against all of those in the budget line item as well, please. All right. Again, you're going to optimize the cost. You have to apply for full funding. Can you look at it as a pilot project? Can you look at a cost offset in some way, shape, or form? Because obviously, the less you ask for, the more chance you have of getting it. Right. Particularly if it's a lump sum funding round where they optimally want to benefit as many people as possible with the funding, a wide variance of people as recipients. Does everything have to be brand new? Interesting, right? Can you share equipment with other libraries or other facets of council? And again, factoring in cost of living and inflation in the current climate as well. Right. So that's where you're sitting down with your finance team to work through a lot of that. Okay. I don't expect you to do that on your own at the end of the day. So be aware of including even minimal costs if not essential, should relate to the project itself. Otherwise, artificial budget inflation, project blowout, unsubstantive. And we don't do retrospective, as I said, to reiterate it again. You can see what I'm emphasizing and reiterating a lot of the time with slides again on top of slides because I want to hammer that home because it's not what I'm seeing as a grants assessor. Methodology. I just want to see a clear GPS strategy of how this is going to work at the end of the day, basically, including the description of the project progress, how it will progress, details of time it will take to accomplish it, and who will undertake this as project manager. Clear pathway linking individual stages. But very much a brief recap of the need, objectives, and expected impacts of the project must certainly provide a very clear description and explanation of how you're going to go about achieving those objectives. And after reading through the methodology statement, I, as a grants assessor, have a clear understanding of how this is going to work, which is, again, quality assurance. Evaluation remember, it begins day one, not day end. Too many people make that mistake. So you're going to be asked, depending on the size and nature of the grant, it could be for a quarterly report, half yearly report, yearly report. You're going to do evaluation from the beginning because you need to look at whether you continue, modify, or delete project activities depending on what's working and what's not working at the end of the day. And I just want assurance that things are on track. So you need some measurement tool, and tell me that you have a measurement tool and how you're using that measurable tool to quantify that for me, please. And this is one of 5 project plans that I give out to libraries that I work with. Your project title list in 10 words, yes, optimally 5, your project summary, and I'm ardent about this in terms of word count of 100 words, the purpose of it, the scope of it, the people involved in delivering it, the financial costings, the timescales of delivery, the risks associated with such and how you're going to mitigate such, and your implementation strategy, because that's just the summary. Your full project description is 1,000 words of that. And again, doing this will allow you then thereafter to extrapolate and write the grant because you have the information accordingly to do so. Okay. And I like this from Common Government Grants Administration. All right. We call it the 7 commandments colloquially. You can see how much they love the words effective and efficient. But if you stick by these 7, you're going to do quite well in terms of grants because this is expectation equals reality. So you're just going to make sure you're ticking the box for them. Okay. Because rightly so, any funding body is risk averse, right? Because it's money. So it's having a due process here. These are the first 4. These are the last 3. And again, we're back to our old friend again, the embedded in there, value for money. Okay. So my top 10 tips, make it about your reader because they are a prospective client to you. Answer the question, try not to waffle, make it clear what's in it for them, the return on investment. Be direct, as I said, talk to the subject, not around the subject. Avoid sweeping statements. Give great examples, mini case studies. Remember, looks and kill. If it's written by a sloppy organization, it reflects the sloppy organization that wrote it. Jog their memory if you've been in receipt of funding from them in the past and remind them of a great job you did at delivering on time and on budget, and make it word perfect. So again, count your words and make your words count. Right? And I don't think that's the grant writing literature you want to be ordering for your library. Okay. I'm being facetious there at the end. Okay. There's some great books out there in grants writing. That's not one. All right. That's me. I'm on LinkedIn as well if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, but they're my contact details. I'm happy to take any questions. If anyone wants to ask a couple of questions, we have some time.
Thank you, Keith. Has anyone got any questions?
Surely be one.
I think you've stunned them.
I think I have.
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned a number of different places where grants are advertised and listed. For example, Grants Guru.
Yeah.
Do you have a list of those that I could share and send out across the
Yeah.
network?
So obviously it's still been recording, so we can call them out. So you got Grants Hub, Grants Guru, the funding center from our community. You got the GEM portal from Strategic Grants. You got Granted. They're the top 5, right? You can subscribe to really in terms of subscription services that allow you to look at grants that are opening and closing across public and private sector in Australia. That's what I'd be advocating. On top of that, as I said, you got federal government, state government, and obviously local government as well, Foundation for Regional Rural Renewal, Grant Connect at federal government level, and then obviously another good one is RDA, Regional Development Australia, have a lot of grants finders or search engine that you can do a grant search on as well. But most councils have it themselves. At the end of the day, basically, they've subscribed to a number of those themselves. So you just need to go to your own council website, and it's usually embedded there.
Jennifer from St George is asking if you could pop back to the summary description slide, please. Jennifer, just letting you know that we are recording this, so you will be able to go back and
What?
have a look at these as well.
Yeah. What specific slide was that?
The
Summary.
summary description slide.
What does that? What's that one? Jennifer, do you want to tell me what that one is, and I'll happily go back to it.
One, she says. That one?
Um,
Is it?
that
No,
one?
no, you got there. It was the don't worry, you went back to it and I read it. It's all good.
Oh, okay. Keep them coming, folks. Pick my brain. I'm not trying to complicate the process. I'm trying to break it down and hopefully get that assurance that it is baby steps, basically. But it's again, it's working out how to resource yourself, having applying for the right grant, looking at eligibility, and having that recurrent process. As I said, as well as raising capital through other means. I mean, I'm working with libraries at the moment, a number of libraries on the bequest programs, instigating those. They're crowdfunding for niche and boutique projects they're undertaking, their fundraising and sponsorship strategy as well, opening up the corporate sponsorships and the like for programs and initiatives, donations policy, taking money from the general public, which they're getting. In an instance late last year, we had a gentleman walk into a public library in Australia and give a six-figure sum. Um, so it's there, right? It's like creating an alumni network for yourself, basically, people who've been using the library for 30, 40 years. So um, yeah, and there's really then collaboration as well, as I said, between particularly between regional and rural libraries as well as much as metro libraries as well. I think that'll be advantageous for a number of programs and projects you're wishing to undertake.
One of the other things that you did mention was a grants policy. Do you have like
Yeah,
a template or an example,
I
or
do. Yeah,
would you be able to flick that to me and I can share it across the
can't
network?
unfortunately because I retail it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's on a need basis, so I charge accordingly because we do it on a case by case basis with clients. So yeah, I can't. It's intellectual property.
No worries.
But look, there's a number of templates out there that should be evidence, Adele, within local government themselves. On the, I mean, come to me obviously if you're looking to purchase such, but there should be resources equivocal to it that other council departments have used that you can adapt accordingly in terms of a policy document, right? There'd be loads of policy documents within local government, obviously. So it's very much again looking pertinent to your own basically at the end of the day. And the policy document is the grants policy around the who, what, when, where, why, justification, due process, governance around such basically. So I talk to your legal team, I would talk to your finance team, I would talk to the policy directive in terms of who manages policies for in certain directorates, and then find an amalgamate and design it yourself. I know it'll take time, but yeah, we retail it obviously because other councils have purchased it. You got something else in chat there, Adele?
I've got a couple of thank yous.
You're welcome, everyone.
We can chat to you. We just had the new policy procedure. Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, no, just a few thank yous from across the network. So
Appreciate
I
that. Thank
too
you.
would like to thank you. It has been a great session. Um, I will do a little plug for next week. Next week on Wednesday at 12:15, back to our usual time. I'm just flicking. We have lightning talks. We have a series of lightning talks. We have three different lightning talks that will be available. One is from Mossman, one is from Northern Beaches, and there's another one who escapes my memory. So, yeah, if you log into those, there'll be three fantastic talks about what's happening in libraries across our network. But again, thank you so much, Keith, for
Thank
your
you.
time today. As I mentioned, it has been recorded, so I will make that available across the network.
Appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Thanks very much. Get that grant.
Thank
Bye.
you so much, Ta.